I'm still chasing the high from the N64 era. I'm Bobby, this is Shiny Brain, and today we're talking about this. The N64 Bluetooth controller from 8BitDo. Now, they're finally shipping Analog is their N64 player. This is a modern device that you can buy to play authentic or, whatever you have, N64 cartridges on modern TVs. It's been delayed 1,000 times, but it's finally coming out this month. I picked this up actually before they announced the latest release date. But I'm just so interested in N64 stuff because I never had it. It was the one generation I never had growing up as a kid from Nintendo. So I've been always interested to try to go back and really see what I missed. So this controller promises to take the N64's very weird layout and make it feel closer to normal. So let's dive into this and see if it actually meets its mission. We'll start with a little unboxing. The N64, or I'm sorry, just the 64 Bluetooth controller. That is the official name of this from 8BitDo. I already broke the seal on it because I was impatient, but here comes the unboxing. You take the cover off, and here it is. We'll save this for a sec. I'll just show you. It also comes with a bunch of literature and a charging cable. Thank you very much. Nobody cares. Everybody get out of the way. We are here to talk about this. This is the controller. I'm shading it towards the light because it's kind of hard to see. This controller is blacker than black. It is as black can be. And I have to say that out of the box, this is a bit of a ding. You know, the N64 was known for its graphics and for its colors. 64-bit represents the colors that it displayed at one time. And I feel like this is too muted. You could get this in black or white. The white one's the same way. Everything's white. And I just kind of wish that there were some color on the controller itself. But I'm happy to report that a normal human being with two arms can actually hold this thing. Unlike the official Nintendo Switch Nintendo 64 controller, which I also have here. This can be bought on Nintendo's website, and I believe nowhere else. But it is exactly as you remember it from 1996. It is the weirdo, two out of three prong controller where Nintendo feels like they weren't quite ready to tell the world, yeah, we're doing analog sticks now. This is how games control. So just in case we screwed that up, here's a D-pad in a place where you could easily access it. But most people obviously held this thing like this, where you've got one thumb above the D-pad and one index finger above the Z button, and the other is holding R, and you can move over the 6 face buttons, B, A, and then the directional pad. And what makes the directional pad very weird by today's standards is a lot of games used this the way you would use an analog stick today to move the camera around. Think Mario 64, Donkey Kong 64. They both used this to move the camera in whatever direction you're pushing it. Zelda famously put your items here, and that made a lot of sense. But it's honestly, it's one of the biggest things that makes going back to this now seem real out of date, is this idea that instead of 2 analog sticks to control a 3D environment, you would get 1 analog stick and 4 face buttons to move the camera. You wouldn't do that today. Nobody's doing that today. But back to the 8BitDo solution. So they have all of these buttons and a few more. Because it's 2025 and they want you to be able to use this in theory with more than just their N64 clone. The Z buttons are now distinct R2 and L2, essentially. Now, They both say Z on them, again, as a commitment to like the Nintendo 64 bit. But these are different buttons. Pressing them does different things. There is a big old start button in the middle, but this would serve as your plus button on the Switch if you were using it on the Switch. Right above it is a minus button that again would serve that purpose if you're using it on the Switch. And then there are two buttons the same way the Switch might have a home button and a photo button. You could get all that functionality here too. And there's also a sync button at the top near the USB-C charging cable. All of that functionality is also on the official Nintendo Switch controller, except, and I think this is a major detriment to the official Nintendo product, they only have that second Z button that the 8BitDo controller has. They have it, but it's teeny tiny and you'd never want to use it. This just brings up the menu in the Nintendo Switch Online app. That's the only purpose it realistically serves. So there you have it. There's the official Nintendo, and here is the 8BitDo product. And I got to tell you, to me, it's a no contest knockout. The 8BitDo product is just so much better, so much more accessible. It makes more sense. It's more comfortable to hold, and it's more versatile. So you can use this with realistically any device. Now, I do have to say that they officially only list support for Windows, the Switch, and Android devices. However, let's go ahead and check and see how it does with these Apple devices that for some reason 8BitDo does not officially list support for. Okay, let's start with Donkey Kong 64. This is OpenEMU, and what you can do is go to Edit Game Controls and switch the import from keyboard down to 8BitDo 64BT because I've already connected it by Bluetooth, and voila. I've got Donkey Kong 64 going here with the 8BitDo controller. I started this save file in a panic just so I could have something to show this off with. But here we go. You know, Donkey Kong jumping around here. You know, again, I think I unlocked this one already. So you use Z to use this. So each of these buttons is different. It would be neat if you had the ability to use them both as Z, if, you know, in case there's some games where you could theoretically use L. I don't know if any games actually did use this left button for anything meaningful. But yeah, here we go in Donkey Kong 64. You know, again, this is one of those games where you can hit the C buttons and the cameras will change. So here we go. Donkey Kong 64 running on a Mac, which technically 8BitDo does not support with this controller, but it's working just fine. Testing it on Delta, I found that the thing paired in S mode. So you got to switch that thing to S to get it to pair with the Delta app for iOS and iPad. And it was working great. And then I realized you can't push the joystick all the way to the right. There's some weird glitch where pushing it all the way to the right moves it to the left. Moves your character to the left. I tried this with the actual N64 controller, which you can also connect to your iPhone or your iPad, and it did not do that. Now, you might dock this controller for that, and certainly maybe for an iPad, I can understand, but I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense to even use a controller like this with an iPhone at this point. It's just not how I would prefer to play a video game. Like, you've got this normal size controller and this teeny tiny screen. Like, the screen's probably going to be pretty far away from you. If I'm playing an iPhone game, I either want it to be a touchscreen first game, or, you know, maybe I'm putting like a backbone on it. I'm not using a separate controller free floating from the device. But it's a knock, you know, it doesn't work. And now, to 8BitDo's credit, that's probably why they don't claim that it works. Right? There's no official support for iOS or even Mac devices, even though I found that the Mac device worked just fine. So moving on to our final test, this is the Switch and Switch 2 test. Now, the Switch 1 worked right out of the box for me. I was able to connect it, but Switch 2, I had to update the firmware on the 8BitDo 64 Bluetooth controller. I give 8BitDo credit. Not a lot of companies are doing this, but they had a dedicated Mac program that let me upgrade the firmware easily. I didn't have to like go find an old Windows device to download an exe file to make it happen. Thank you, 8BitDo. I appreciate it. Painless update, less than a minute, and voila, it worked with the Switch. Now, one of the quirks with using this thing on the Switch is that it presents as a Nintendo 64 controller to the Switch. So what that means is it's going to have a few limitations that other controllers wouldn't have. For example, you cannot edit the button mapping on this device. So if for whatever reason you were trying to ham fist this thing into working with a different game besides an N64 game, you won't be able to fix like any problems that arise doing that. There is a neat byproduct though, in that when you open the N64 app on the Switch, it gives you the experience like you're using the official N64 controller. So I don't know if Nintendo is chill with that, but it's kind of a neat thing. And it kind of brings me back to, at the end of the day, which of these two am I going with? And I gotta tell you, I just think it's this hands down. Unless you have just severe nostalgia for this form factor and you're like, take me back to Christmas 96. Give me this Nintendo 64 back into my life. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. But I think for most other people, this is the way to go. The other thing about this, I bought this on sale for $27 on Amazon, link in the description. And it only retails for $40 at its maximum price. And that's just a terrific deal, especially for kind of a, throwback, maybe a bit of an impulse purchase where if I'm asking myself, like, how often am I going to use this? It's certainly not a daily driver controller. I'm not playing Nintendo 64 games all the time. But when I do, this is how I'll be playing them. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, please do me a favor, subscribe and hit the like button. I am all about diving into Nintendo's past, present, and future, which, by the way, ain't getting any cheaper. Are you liking Pokemon Legends ZA? Here's a few things I think Nintendo could do to fix the experience of what is a really fun game just trapped in like 2012. Watch this and see what you think. I'll see you in the comments.